information about what they're doing and advice and tips and things like that. We're gonna have 4 people. One is Sydney Weber. It's her first year in a PhD program here at K-State. She graduated from Missouri State in Springfield, and she got her undergraduate degree in economics and global studies. And then we also have Lucas Goldberg de Rosa. He's right over here. He is in the PhD program here. He had his undergrad here at K-State and in economics and a minor in statistics. And I'll let Suzanne introduce the other 2.
So then we have 2 people on Zoom. First is Brock. He got his undergrad here at K-State last spring in economics with minors in statistics and math. He was also our vice president of the club for 2 years and then president last year. Right now, he is getting his master's in applied economics at Montana State. And then we have Krista Denault, who will be presenting a little bit since she's almost finished her PhD. But she got her undergrad at K-State and now she's at Cornell.
So why do we have our
Okay, kind of just introduce. Sure. Okay, well, if you 2 would like to come up and introduce yourself a little more and give a blurb, and then we'll let our 2 Zoom people do that as well.
You go first. I begin?
Yep,
Okay.
Seniority. Okay. Well, since I have seniority here, so hello everyone. My name is Lucas Goldberg de Rosa, like Grace said. So I've been here at K-State since the fall of 2016. Came here for my undergrad. I am originally from Brazil, so I moved here to come to K-State for my undergrad, and I ended up liking it quite a lot. Enjoyed Dr. Keister's class and how he teaches it, and I was convinced, and I really, what didn't take much convincing, to apply for the PhD program here. And I am a graduate teaching assistant now here, and I taught principles. I'm teaching principles of macroeconomics this semester, and I've taught intermediate macroeconomics for 2 semesters prior to that. Suzanne was one of my students in one of those semesters. Really good student. I've been having, good teaching evaluations, so that works out, and I've been really enjoying the teaching aspect. And I've just passed my, well, not just passed, but I've already passed my PhD qualifying exams, which is done all the base introduction classes and stuff like that, and I can expand on that if you guys want.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Sydney Weber. I'm from Springfield, Missouri, born and raised. I'm a Midwest gal. No, I'm not from the South. Although some people, if you're really like from the North, you might think I have an accent. But anyways, I am a first-year PhD student here at K-State. I'm also a GTA, but I'm not yet teaching classes. So if anybody is taking human resource economics and/or intermediate microeconomics with Dr. Bostwick, I'm the one who grades your stuff. So no, I really enjoy it, and I get so happy anytime anybody gets a question right. So no, I never judge anyone for missing something. I'm always focusing on what you get right. And part of starting grad school is using that same attitude towards myself. I did not have a graduate degree prior to starting the PhD here, unlike several of my cohort mates. And oh boy, was it different. It's difficult. I was talking to Ben, and I'm about 10 years younger than most of my classmates. So it's been a shock, but so far it's been very challenging and very, very rewarding. So I'm excited to answer any questions that you guys might have.
And then Brock and Krista, if you'd like to kind of introduce yourselves as well.
Sure. Krista, would you like to go
Brock,
first? Oh, sorry.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, go on ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Krista. I did my undergrad at K-State.
Brock, could you say something?
Let's make
I'm not
sure
if you
that
can
the sound
see
is up on the computer. That's probably the problem. but we're gonna start with Brock, and then Chris is gonna give a little presentation. I look at this sound.
Okay.
Okay, try to
Okay.
speak, Brock.
Testing. Can you all hear me?
Yes, now we can.
All right, perfect. So, like Suzanne said in the introduction she gave, my name is Brock O'Brien. I graduated K-State last spring. Major in economics, minor math and statistics. I was with the Econ club for most of my undergrad, so I was really excited for the opportunity to come talk to you guys about grad school. I grew up in Western Kansas, and right now I'm going to grad school at Montana State University with their applied economics program, which is definitely a change of scenery from out in Kansas, but it's been a really good experience so far.
And then Krista, if you'd like to introduce yourself and I think go through your presentation as well.
Sure. Let me see if I can share my screen. You can. Okay. Can you give me screen sharing ability?
You can. We need to stop our share. There we go. Now try.
Okay. Just a little, no, I'm only gonna do a couple of, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm only going to do a couple of slides, but I sent the slides to Suzanne and to Dan. So if you, I basically just put everything I could think of that I found to be useful about the process of like, whether I want to go into a PhD or, and then like how to go about it, and then like kind of what to expect in this presentation. And if you're interested, just, reach out to them for it. It has some useful links. So anyway, I graduated from K-State in December of 2016 with degrees in applied math and economics. And I started my PhD program in July of 2017. So basically I'm a grandma now. So my program, Cornell, they had a math camp. So I actually started in the summer. And now if you want to do the math, I'm a 5th year and I'll be looking for a job. I'll be on the job market next year. So my current research, just to kind of give you guys a flavor of what economists do, I'm broadly speaking an education labor / applied micro person. And so what does that mean practically? Well, I have a paper on a policy that was passed in Louisiana that required high school graduates to file the FAFSA. And I find that this increases college enrollment post policy. And this paper is a revise and resubmit at AEJ policy. And then I have a second paper that's co-authored with a classmate, Abby. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand how preferences for intermarriage have changed over time. So essentially, if people, which we know is not true, if people get married at random, the change in the demographics that have happened in the last several decades in the US would cause intermarriage rates to increase. And so we're trying to delineate the effects of the big changes in demographics from actual changes in preferences for homophily. And then the final paper is kind of two sides of the same coin. So I just kind of put a dash here. I don't know exactly where it's going yet. But I have access to an administrative data set in the state of Texas that tracks students from high school into college into the workforce. And so I'm looking at how local labor markets at different points in time affect students' college major choice, or whether it does. And I have additional information on teachers. So I'm kind of focusing in on teacher labor market specifically. And then I just wanted to say too, that my experiences are my own, which may be affected by the fact that I'm going to a private school that's well-funded. But anyway, I thought it would be useful to just sort of talk about what it's like, what's expected from a PhD. So your first year, you take 2 semesters of and you guys can feel free to jump in if I see anything incorrect, because like I said, I only know my own experiences. So in your first year, you take 2 semesters of micro, macro, and econometric theory. And for me, I also had to take a math econ class. And then in your first year, typically in the summertime, you have to take qualifying exams. So we've already kind of talked about that a little bit. And qualifying exams, typically you have to pass in like X amount of attempts in order to stay in the program or you get kicked out. The second year you take field classes. These are sort of courses that you're actually interested in. I mean, you can be interested in micro, macro, and econometric theory, but most people don't do those. And then at the end of your second year / summer, you write a paper. And then in your third year, fall semester, you typically present this paper to faculty and your cohort members, and you start prepping for your A exam. And your A exam is basically an informal agreement between you and your committee that says, hey, if I do these 3 projects, will you give me a PhD? And they say, yeah, sure. And it's basically a formality because they know that things can change and sometimes research doesn't work out the way that you think it's going to. And then after that, you do that research. Typically, PhDs last 5 to 6 years. 6 years if you're at a well-funded school is pretty typical. And then your final year, whatever year that is, you're on the job market. And typically you don't have time to do any of your actual research. So you need to get it done beforehand, because basically from October to mid-spring, you're essentially doing all like job market prep stuff. And so the other 2 things I wanted to mention is that in econ, your job market paper is like very important. So typically you have three chapters of your dissertation, so you have 3 papers, but one of them kind of is like the epitome of what you think you can do, and it kind of shows everyone, it's the paper that you go on the job market with and you show everybody, hey, this is what I can do economics. And then the last thing I was going to say is that when I first came to Cornell, my advisor she kind of described doing a PhD as entrepreneurial, and I like in hindsight, I find this like very useful, which is that you have to set your own agenda and you completely decide what you're working on, how you're going to work on it. And that definitely has its pros and cons, but we can talk about that if you guys find that useful. Anyway, I will stop sharing.
Well, I just wanted to add a little thing to that presentation. So at least at K-State here, there's another step after the field exam, after the field courses that you take. You have to take a field examination as well. So you take the classes you're interested in, like Krista said, and then you bundle up those classes to create one what's called a field examination to see if you don't get kicked out, like you said again. So then you write a paper and some proposal to begin your dissertation process. Yeah. So apparently there's no field examinations at Cornell. Okay.
And Dr. De Silva could possibly put more light on this than I could, but I think that used to be pretty universal, and now I think it's 50-50 in schools. Am I way off on that? Yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely a mix. I don't know the exact percentage. If I had to guess, I'd say it's about half the schools have field exams, but that could be way off. Yeah. I took field exams back when I did everything on paper, University of Missouri, so.
Well, if anyone else has anything to add between you 4, then I'll let you do that. Otherwise, if anyone in the audience has questions, we're kind of going to do a question and answer. If not, I have some questions as well. So just kind of raise your hand or let me know if you have a question, and then I can bring you a microphone or however we want to go about it. But if not, then I have some. So one thing I wanted to know, Ben, do you have something? Okay, one thing I wanted to know is just kind of what has been the hardest part of grad school and the easiest part, I guess, or your favorite part. So, for you four.
Well, I guess I can begin. So I began my PhD program literally in the spring of 2020. So I had a month of in-person classes, and then some stuff changed. Let's keep it PG-13 here then. Let's say that some stuff changed, okay? So I was prepared. I really like having in-person classes and, being able to look at, people's faces and asking questions in person. I have two of my professors here. I believe I asked a lot of questions and talked a lot in class. Good ones. There. Okay, good. I did not do that with virtual classes. That was the hardest part for me, was adjusting to the virtual environment. Readjusting to the new reality. The best part was seeing that I could just continue my studies in economics. I really liked every single class that I took in economics. I really enjoyed, and just having more classes, having a deeper knowledge set was really enjoyable for me. Like Sydney said, it was more difficult, but also, more enjoyable.
I guess I can go next. So I am brand spanking new at all this. So right now, everything is pretty difficult. The coursework is at a level that I've never experienced. I didn't start preparing for graduate school. It wasn't even on my radar until pretty later on. But honestly, I kind of alluded to this fact, but the hardest thing has been the social aspect of grad school. This is my first time living outside of my hometown. You're not stuffed in a dorm with a bunch of people who are, have similar interests and are at similar stages of life. And I've absolutely loved every single person I've met at K-State. Everyone's very nice. But if your classmate has a kid, they don't want to go get a coffee with you. They're not interested in doing the stuff I want to do as a younger person. So I've found the social aspect probably even harder than the academic aspect, but who's to say that's a bad thing? At the very least, at the end of my 5 years at K-State, hopefully you can call me an adult. That's the goal. But best thing has honestly been the challenge. It's good to be humbled every once in a while, and it's good to learn new things, and I've really appreciated that.
If Brock or Krista has anything they would like to add.
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I mean, every year of grad school has its own challenges. Probably for the hardest for me was kind of transitioning into full-time research, just because when you're a student, you have you know how to study and you know how to learn information. That's what you've practiced your whole life. But research is kind of creating something from nothing. I mean, not quite. I mean, you definitely build on other people's work, but you have to be more creative, and it's tough. That's a tough transition to make. And it can be kind of isolating. And so I think that's probably the part I've struggled with the most. But then I would say the parts that I enjoy the most are sort of actually the social aspect. So my program, yeah, people are older than me, but I would say it's really nice to be around people who are so smart all the time, and you just kind of get smarter by being around them, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and then I'll go ahead and give my thoughts on it too. I guess the hardest part for me in like adjusting to grad school, and again, I'm like in a master's program and this is like my first semester, so I'm just starting out, but the workload was definitely an adjustment. I remember it was about after the first exam we had, we just started getting swamped with stuff to do. It's a different degree entirely than undergrad, and it's good because it's challenging, keeps you on your feet, but it's definitely something you have to get used to. And I don't know, just like getting into the whole like research mindset is kind of, it's different and it's pretty challenging. I mean, it's rewarding, but it's definitely something you have to learn. And we had to come up with not like thesis topics or anything, but like research projects for a class for econometrics, like in the first 2 weeks of getting here. It was like, whoa. So there was a lot of pressure there, but it's been good. I think my favorite part, I have to agree with Krista, is the social aspect. Maybe being in a master's program, you get less of that age difference. Most of the cohort I've been with are about the same age as I am, and they're all really good and really smart people that have made plenty of friends out of that group so far.
Nice, thank you guys. And I think Ben had a question as well that he would like to ask.
Thanks for coming, everyone. You answered one of the ones that I had. The other question I had is, for those who are probably more farther along in their process of completing their degree, what do you hope or think you're going to like get in terms of like for like the job market after you get your degree, right? So like, is there a sort of like career or industry you can go to with a PhD, or is that mostly just like you're going to be in academia? Like, what are your sort of opportunities with those sort of degrees?
Krista, you're the closest one to doing that. Do you wanna start?
Yeah, I have a slide that is probably useful. So let me just share it. So can you see it again?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, I think you can break down who hires PhD economists into like a few categories. So there's sort of like I want to do research pretty much full time. Those are going to be like universities. Obviously, universities, you have to split your time with teaching, think tanks, IMF, World Bank, those types of things. Then there's consulting groups. So an example of this is analysis group. They kind of just private companies will hire them and they'll kind of solve problems for those private companies. Government organizations, so like the BLS, Census, FDA, they all hire economists, and then there's even a pretty strong private sector. So I know people who have interviewed or worked for Amazon and Airbnb and like all kinds of different places typically hire economists, PhD economists. Most places, like most or a lot of graduate programs will put historical placements because this is sort of like how they, indicate how good of a grad school they are. So I've listed Cornell's historical placements in case you want to get a sense of where people end up after their PhD. But in terms of like you really just kind of don't know. The nice thing is that like there is a pretty strong demand for econ PhDs, which is not true for every PhD program. Some fields, there's quite a problem with finding a job after you get your PhD, but econ doesn't seem to be one of those fields. So I'm personally targeting academia. So I'd like to get a tenure track position, but academia is kind of brutal. So I would also be happy with like a private sector job or like, government, non-university job.
And so just to jump in here,
Mhm.
first of all, we're definitely going to post these slides if Krista's on the website, and I'll also email them to the listserv. I know some of you get better than check the website. One thing about economics is if you're particularly if you're looking at, you know, data analysis, potentially consulting work, there are some nice opportunities that the marginal benefit of getting the master's can be pretty substantial there as well. Obviously, there are more opportunities with a PhD, but kind of what Krista was saying is you want, if you have a particular non-academic job in mind, you might look at the hiring practices of econ master's graduates in those lines of work. If you want to do an academic job, then you definitely need to pursue the PhD, unless you just want to do something, you know, adjunct on the side because you enjoy it, but it's not going to be a great viable salary payment for the type of work you're putting into.
That's what I was gonna say, because what I'm targeting is, okay, academia, yes, but what I want to be is teaching. So the teaching aspect for me is important, but to be able to get into that lane, universities require a PhD, right? So yes, I agree that the marginal benefit of a master's is really good, especially if you develop the skills that the private sector requires for these positions. Okay, so you get the signaling right from the degree, and you also get develop the skills to be successful in the job that you want, that is available. And the PhD specifically opens up all of the universities as a potential employer. That is should factor into your decision to get a PhD or not. If, well, maybe like Dr. Keister said, the largest marginal benefit might be the master's.
Thank you, guys. Our audience, if anyone has any questions, Suzanne?
Yeah, so a lot of you skipped your master's, went straight to a PhD, or even Brock just going to a master's. I was wondering if you thought your undergrad degree set you up for success, or if there was more that it could do for you, or if you have any tips to get more out of it, so when you go to grad school, you're more set up to succeed. That's basically my question.
So it's a huge jump, but if you notice, there is a common thread amongst all of us. Did anybody pick out what that was other than econ? Come on, somebody picked it out. Shout it out. No, unfortunately. Mathematics. Unfortunately, at least at my institution, the highest math requirement to get a degree in econ was college algebra. And I'll tell you right now, in grad school, that is not going to get you anywhere. In fact, most places for a master's degree require Calc 1, which is usually a 5-credit-hour course. And for a PhD, they usually require Calc 1, Calc 2, and at least linear algebra, but most programs want more than that. So I personally had never taken calculus until second semester my junior year. I'd never taken it in high school, never thought about it. As far as I knew, you know, I was going to be my global studies major with my French minor and, you know, all that good stuff. So here I am, and I graduated with a math minor, and I did it in 3 semesters. And let me tell you, that one minor, and this might be a hot take, speaking to a room full of undergraduate econ people, was more useful than my entire degree in economics, or it has been so far this semester. So I would say, especially if you're thinking PhD, you need to take math. And I would recommend at least get a master or a minor in it. Now, for a master's program, you still at least need Calc 1. And don't worry, you can do it. It's never too late. I'm proof of that. And I also took Calc 1 during COVID semester. So try learning calculus online in spring 2020. It was brutal. But I would really say, as lovely as my undergraduate program was in economics, and I learned so much, and all of that is super useful, you gotta pair it with math. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me in applying. And honestly, here's how you decide what math classes you need to take. You look at schools and programs you're interested in, you go to their admissions requirement page. And that's how I decided, oh gosh, I need a minor. Is just, when they list 4 courses that you've never taken, okay, take those 4 courses. So that's what I would recommend. Keep taking your undergraduate classes, take them in things you're interested in. Take ones that challenge you. Don't just take the easy classes, although I highly doubt there are any at K-State, but just take some math. You won't regret it. And again, it's not too late. I finished a minor in 3 semesters, having never taken calc. So you guys can do it if you're serious.
I just want to step in real quick and then second that. So I want to second what Sydney said, because I agree that because universities and programs offer the student quite a lot of leeway into how they structure their classes, right? If you don't do that properly, you might be lacking something when you apply for a graduate level program. So I was fortunate enough to be given that advice, and I took math econ as an undergrad, which is a graduate level class I took as an undergrad, and it was my first B in the program. Okay, so it helped a lot because it teaches you a lot of math really quick, helps you develop what you need, especially like the early classes here, micro classes. There's a lot of math proofs and stuff like that, and then you have a lot of derivations that you have to do, and most importantly, understand what you're doing. So building those skills is really important for grad school. There is a large jump in requirements math-wise from undergrad to grad school. Okay, I didn't want to scare you fine people here with this stuff, but yeah, it's important to talk about.
And from my findings, if you're trying to minimize the number of math classes you want to take, but maximize your options of schools to apply for, I found it was these 4 classes: some higher level statistics, Calc 1, Calc 2, linear algebra. That was kind of the sweet spot of okay, don't get a major in math, but also take what you need to maximize the number of schools you can apply for.
And just to kind of give some perspective for those of you that major in economics here, we have the potential to do an accelerated master's program where you can get a master's through our department. You'll work with myself and Dr. Bachmeyer in 5 years. That's something that we've had people do over the years. Our requirement, as was mentioned, for the undergrad degree is just a Calc 1, and you can even get by with business calc for the economics major. And that's great from the perspective of we have a lot of majors do a lot of different things, but the people that do consider graduate work, we usually try to push toward the analyst track where they have, some other courses required that are more math heavy. And I would just echo, even though, again, I did grad work before most of you were born, I went to an undergrad at a liberal arts school at Drury College down in Springfield, Missouri, and we only required Calc 1, and I took it my freshman year. And I remember my advisor saying, after my senior year that I was graduating, he's like, well, you might want to take Calc 2 this summer before you go on to grad school. And I was like, Calc 2? I was like, taking classes before I go to grad school? I mean, come on, I've worked all this time. I want the summer. I worked Drury maintenance for the summer. I did grunt work to hopefully make me work harder in grad school, because I knew I didn't want that kind of a job long term. But I should have listened. I told him later, I'm like, why didn't you tell me no? You must take Calc 2. So I did my graduate work at University of Missouri, and my first year was a lot of catching up on the math and doing the math econ and taking Calc 2 and Calc 3, and they were pretty understanding. Today, that might, in a lot of places, that wouldn't fly. You need to go in there prepared. So you need to go in there with both eyes wide open, I think.
Yeah, and if I can just sort of sorry, sort of add on to all that, even on the master's level, like, yeah, as much math as you can take is helpful. I'd also recommend taking as much econometrics as you can. Econometrics, what was the course number? I think 730 with Dr. Lee there at K-State. That's pretty good. Maybe won't quite get you like 100% prepared, but I guess nobody's really 100% prepared, so that's a good place to start.
Also, sorry to interrupt, but you can also
No.
start with Econ 630, which
Yeah.
is undergrad level intro to econometrics, and then 730 I think is applied econometrics.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but I definitely recommend taking both. Those will get you started, start in the right direction there for some skills you'll really need. And I guess maybe like outside of class, as much as you can teach yourself in like R or Stata would be incredibly helpful. Like having R skills, like I picked up some R on my own and through Dr. Bachmeyer's forecasting class, which I also really recommend. And that has been like tremendously helpful. So as much of that as you can do it.
Now I'm just realizing that I took all the classes that we're talking about.
I guess just to kind of round us out, I agree that like the math is like absolutely necessary to like signal to a grad school that you're ready to take the classes. And even like if for the macro classes that I took at Cornell, I would say even analysis is really helpful. And that's, you know, senior level math major stuff. But if you can get in and like take the classes, you know, just try your best. The other things I was thinking of too are, again, like Brock said, definitely learning a language and like learning LaTeX and then some sort of programming language, which is not something you're ever going to really be taught. And so, you know, jumping in straight from undergrad, I had to learn material and learn how to code and do all this stuff. And it was a lot of extra heartache for little. And then also just like, I guess my unsolicited advice is like, if you can, I don't regret jumping right in to a PhD program, and I'm glad I did it this way. But I think the general advice would be like, try to get some research experience before you go into grad school. And the reason why this is so important is because you get paid to learn these things. You get paid to learn how to use data. I mean, that's part of your job. And then you'll also learn sort of like how the sausage is made. So you kind of figure out what research is like and, you know, whether you like it or not, which is really important before you kind of dive in. And then also really important things like, what am I interested in? Because it takes a while to kind of figure out what kind of research you want to do. And there is a lot of flexibility in the econ major, like fortunately, like PIs with like science, like PhDs is like a whole disaster. Like you already have to know what you're doing exactly before you even get into grad school. Econ is not like that. You can change around a lot. But it is useful to have a sense of what you like and what's out there and the data sets and those kinds of things and what people talk about. And if you can get a sense of that before you go into grad school, that certainly helps.
So this probably follows really well, especially you just talking about research, but in particular, when you say research, I really, as an undergraduate major, I really don't have an idea of what research necessarily is, how you start it, how you get a topic really decided. Can you guys all touch on kind of how you got to find your very specific topic and things that you've done with your research?
Well, so I haven't really started my own research specifically, but so research itself is there's a difference between how a school is up to the PhD, to the graduate level, and then the graduate work itself, right? So throughout, you know, K through 12 and stuff like that, you're taught to learn. We give you information, and then they ask us questions, and we're supposed to provide answers, right? The students provide answers. Well, research is the opposite. You're providing questions, and then you're answering those questions that didn't have answers before, right? So you have to find some research question that has not been answered before, and either theoretically answer it or find data and empirically prove it. So there's two types of research, right? Theoretical and then empirical. But basically, you have to adjust your way of thinking, and you have to learn how to ask good questions that will lead you to some answer. Is that helpful? Well, and specifically, if you just ask questions and then answer them, but don't publish them, that's also not considered research, right? If no one gets to read your research, then it's technically if you're not putting it out there for the universe, right? If you're not contributing to knowledge by answering that new question, then you're not done. You see what you understand?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that was said there. I guess my viewpoints on it are a little bit biased because my school, or here at Montana State, we are extremely empirical. So that's like what our school specializes in. So some advice for getting started with research, or like starting to think about it, if you're like coming with that approach, would be just try reading some like academic economic papers, and start like getting your feet wet, learning like how to read those, because that's a skill in and of itself. And you'll be doing a lot of that because there's like lit reviews. I haven't even started scratching the surface of that, but that's generally where you're going to start with like research ideas, is like doing this lit review, seeing like what have people already done in this area, what questions like still remain in this area, like what. And another thing that you can pick up on is like what data are people using to answer these questions, and then you can also start piecing that together with other data sets that you know of, and think of, there's this other data I know of that maybe this can add to this question in some way or another. So there's things like that, and a lot of that will come along with as you learn more about like econometrics, learning more data handling, like in a language or data, anything like that. So I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. In senior seminar, there's an opportunity for the final paper in that class to try something like that. And if anybody's like thinking about grad school, I would definitely like talk to a professor if you're taking that class and try to do something that's along those veins. Regardless of how well it comes out, to be honest, because the experience is what's important, and it'll take several tries to get good research, and I'm not even there yet, but it's important to start trying.
Yeah, I think, Brock's approach is a lot of the applied micro approach, and is like a really good way of thinking about research in general. I guess when I think about like what is research, it's kind of like you pose a question, you say, here's how I'm going to answer it, and then you prove to your audience, this is how I've answered it. And that's kind of what a paper is. And that is like, a paper is one piece of research, an entire field. The things that you have to consider, which like we've already talked about, are, like, is the question worth asking? What have other people done? how can I improve upon what they've done already? And it's really hard, right? Like there's no, it's not something you can Google. So it's like, it's a little difficult to say like, how do you do it? Because that's like exactly the point. Like, how do you do it? Like, that's what you're there to do, is to like, just, bang your head against the wall until you find something, essentially. And just making progress, essentially, just doing the best that you can. But anyway.
I think I'll also just say something briefly as someone who doesn't know jack squat about research yet. That's the point of grad school, is to force you to do it, to teach you how. I think a lot of it starts making more sense once you take statistics, econometrics. So if it sounds like super overwhelming, like I don't know either, and I've been admitted to the program, so it's not the end of the world. But yeah, it's just like, you learn about scientific method in high school, and maybe your college bio class is the same thing, but economics. And that's what the point of grad school is. It's to help facilitate that transition into like, okay, maybe you've seen like the idea of a hypothesis testing in statistics. Okay, here's how you do that in economics. So it's don't freak out about it, because man, I need to start stressing if you're stressing, because we're even closer to the reckoning on that one.
Thank you guys for that one. Any other questions from the audience? Suzanne?
As for me, a big question I have is, how would you best suggest to manage your time? I know you guys say the workload's a lot, but like, how do you fit everything in? Basically, is what I'm asking, since I don't never experienced that yet.
Well, if you figure it out, let me know. But so it can be difficult, yeah. So that honestly is a very important part of graduate school, is being organized. Okay, so I definitely had to better my organizational skills, because I don't know, I just kind of in undergrad I did stuff as it came up, never really had any time management problems. But as the workload and what you need to do increases, that approach isn't the best anymore, right? So organizing your time, and especially if you're on an assistantship, okay? So if you have teaching responsibilities, if you have research responsibilities, and then you still care about your social life and stuff like that, and like sleeping, which I do, that's a big time constraint, right? So being organized and using your time well is very important. So what I usually set some upper limit onto how much I should prepare for teaching classes, right? And I usually try to finish my personal assignments as first, and then with my spare time, then try and start, and asking questions, and then reading up on the literature to see if it's been answered, how I can add something or not, and stuff like that. So please, if someone has a better answer.
I can volunteer something maybe. So I found it quite difficult to manage my schedule when I was still taking classes, because you don't really have options about when your tests are. And so you like have to study for your tests, so that can be challenging, but I think a good place to start is like knowing when, like, I mean, you kind of already spoke to this, but like knowing when to stop, like when is good enough. You're not going to learn everything. You're just not. So you have to like learn how to budget your time in terms of like, what am I not going to learn? Or like, like what can I just feasibly not do right now? And like also just listen to yourself and like your body and your mind, because I think it can be really easy to give into peer pressure, because you're like, especially in a PhD program, you start with a cohort and you're with this cohort all the time and you're taking all the same classes, and so you know everything that they're doing. And like when we were coming up to qualifying exams, some people in my program were studying, like, I kid you not, like 15 hours a day. And that is just not possible for me. Like, I could not do that. And I didn't, and I passed. So, like, you don't have to. And I'm definitely not smarter than they were. Like, they were smarter than me. So, you just have to, like, listen to the reason. Now, on the flip side, when you get into the research side, like, it actually becomes the opposite. Like, you don't have as much going on. And so you have to make sure that you're diligent with your time, because nobody's telling you what to do. And so you have to make sure that you are staying on top of things and you're just doing something, like that's what my philosophy is. Like, if I can't stand to look at my research for another second, I'm going to do something else that's productive, like just do something. And then one practical thing that I do, so I'm on fellowship this year, which means that I don't have to work for anybody. I just work for myself. And so what I do is I split my day up into certain like chunks. So that way I never am like expecting myself to like be on 100% more than like maybe 2 or 3 hours at a time. And that way I'm constantly getting breaks. So that way I feel more refreshed when I do come in to do work, because you have to think really hard all the time, and that can be quite taxing. So you want to make sure that you take the breaks.
Do you have any other questions? We probably have time for one or two.
Go ahead, Cody, you have that mic to turn on.
It's working? Okay. So I was just kind of wondering, we've touched on it a little bit, but I'm doing a concurrent master's in business administration program, which is quite different from what you guys are doing from what I've heard, because it just feels like an extension of undergrad. But how does your day kind of structured, and how does that change going forward? I know you were kind of talking about how you had some just normal classes mixed with graduate teaching into more research, but kind of how does that change happen and how do you adapt to it?
Yes, yeah. So I'm only in my first year. I'm not teaching classes yet. My day, hot take, and I know this is gonna really change soon. I have more time than I ever had. If you're pretty busy in undergrad, like if you're already working 20 hours a week and taking, 18 credit hours, you're no stranger to a packed schedule. And I know this is gonna change, like 180 so quick. But it's the same. If you're pretty self-motivated, you're gonna know, okay, like I focus best between these hours and these hours to study. So you take those hours and you study. If you know you have to teach a class from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., there you go. So I'd say it's just the same thing. Maybe the intensity and the quantity of things that you're responsible for have increased. But I mean, that's what growing up and going through college is about. It's starting small and then scaling up to the bigger picture. So chances are you're likely already practicing time management. It's going to be on a drastically different scale, but you're just going to scale it up, and it's going to be a little more high stakes, a little more draining, but chances are you're already doing it.
I've been doing whatever's on my Google Calendar. So I started using Google Calendar after I got into the PhD program. So I put the chunks of what, I put, okay, my classes are here. I'm going to take this time to grade stuff, and I'm going to take this time to prepare the lectures, and what else? Okay, I'm going to take this chunk here and just, read on some issues. And then I have my own classes. So there's these chunks here. So That's my master, basically. I follow whatever is on my calendar. And I have to remember to put stuff on my calendar, otherwise I get bombarded with stuff that I forgot.
Any other comments on that or any other questions from our audience? Alrighty. Well, you, sir?
Well, I
anything?
think certainly we want to thank our speakers. I will disagree with one thing I've heard here tonight. My guess from my experience is Krista's right at the top of that cohort, just like she was here. I think she's selling herself a little bit short. I was at home over visiting parents over Thanksgiving, and we like to do jigsaw puzzles. And when you walk away from the jigsaw puzzle, sometimes you sit back down. It's like, oh, I got this, this, and this. How did I not see that? That's kind of the way research can be sometimes. So that's my little analogy. But we've had a great hour here. If it's okay with everybody, I'll put this up on YouTube for everybody to see forever. But shake your head, yes, Brock. Thank you. Yeah, all right. And I'll talk to these folks. So yeah, but let's thank our speakers. This is a really great evening. Again, the plan for the next formal meeting is the Monday, what would that be, the 31st of January. So keep your plans open for that, and we'll get you all the information and take drinks and whatever food's left over before you leave. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. You want me to end it?
Yeah, go ahead and end it. That's okay. I think she's ending it. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks to both
you.
of you.